Hi everyone. I'd like to give you a few tips for CELTA today for those of you who are interested in taking the course. The first thing that we should be aware of is the standards of the course. So the standards of CELTA are a UK level 5. So you don't need to have any previous experience studying in order to enter this program. So very importantly, keep in mind that CELTA is a pre-service program, which means that if you have never taught before, you're okay to enter the program. You don't need to have any knowledge on teaching in order to gain something from the CELTA. But of course, you should spend the time before the course preparing yourself by reading some books. Books by Jim Scrivener or Jeremy Harmer are the best place to start. Or Jeremy Harmer. Also, Scott Thornbury. Those are the top 3 books on teaching methodology, top 3 authors, on teaching methodology that can get you ready for this program. Now, an important thing to keep in mind is, what if you are an experienced teacher? Maybe you've been teaching for 10 years and you think that, you don't know if you want to take the CELTA or not. Well, I have had candidates who have been teaching since I've been in school myself. Some very experienced teachers come through and they gain lots of practical knowledge from the course. Lots of good things that they understand by the end of it that they actually hadn't realized beforehand. Because the thing about teaching is that we're very habitual and we fall into certain patterns with the way that we do things. So, even if you've been teaching for years and years, the CELTA will still give you a unique insight into certain parts of the methodology. So, long story short, CELTA is a program for everyone. It doesn't matter if you have been teaching for many years or if you've just stepped foot in the classroom and you don't know how to elicit or how to present grammar, meaning, form, and pronunciation. Even if you have been teaching for 10 years, you're going to learn how to do these things in an entirely different way, and you're going to look at more student-centered approaches. So you learn everything, but you learn it in a new way, in a way that you probably haven't been familiar with in the past. Another important thing to keep in mind is that your tutor will be guiding you throughout this process. So no matter what, the tutor adapts the feedback based on your experience. And that brings us to the second point here, which is expectations. So basically, it's very important here to keep in mind that there are some expectations from the tutor. And the tutor doesn't expect you to be a wizard in the classroom. In fact, the tutor just hopes to see that you're, helping the students to learn something. So what I like to say is that as long as you don't spit on the students, you'll be fine. And so what does it mean to spit on the students? I don't mean physically, because of course no one would do that. But I mean, you shouldn't harm them purposefully. So purposefully harming a student is teaching them the wrong thing. For example, if we teach the second conditional, and we say, if he would be going to the school, he would have not had a school time, something, mistake like that. And if you teach them this and you write it down and say, this is the correct form, students all write this down in their notebook, then they believe that you, the expert, the teacher, are giving them the correct language, and then they go out into the real world and they make mistakes because their teacher said so. So basically, the expectations from the tutor are don't spit on the students, right? Teach them the correct language, always. So that's why it's so important for you to have a high level of English. You need to have a minimum of C1 level in order to start the course. and it doesn't matter if you have a certificate in CAE, IELTS, CPE, TOEFL, not important. During the pre-interview task, they will ask you questions, get you to write an essay and do a language analysis task in order to check if you actually know this information. So that's one thing, but the other thing is what we call action points from teaching practice. So you will be teaching 8 times, and the teacher will be watching you. The tutor will be watching you teach, And while you're teaching, the tutor will be writing down feedback, everything that you do, basically. What I usually do is write a running narrative and then maybe a couple of questions. Why did you do this? Why did you do that? You did this very well. The students really liked that. Excellent work with the student-centered activity, etc. But then at the end of the feedback, there's always what are called action points. And the tutor should only be giving you 3 action points maximum, because they're things that you should work on developing for your next teaching practice. So just considerations for the future. And the best way to do very well in CELTA is to focus on just those points. Because it's like juggling, right? You have so many balls in your hands and you're trying to do the right thing. And, if you focus on all of them, you're going to drop them. But if you focus on the one that's coming next into your hand, then you'll be able to coordinate. So keep your eye on 1 or 2 or maximum 3 different things at the same time. And the tutor will guide you. And if you're not sure, you can always approach the tutor and say, what's the most important thing that I should work on for the next lesson? And the tutor will have some useful advice. So that's really important, is keeping the expectations of the tutor in mind and understanding in connection with the pre-service program that we talked about earlier, element of the course. The tutor's not expecting miracles, but the tutor, if they see that you're doing remarkably well, will raise the bar a little bit and try and bring you up in terms of your performance by challenging you and asking you to try different things. You don't have to necessarily do guided discovery or TTT, test, teach, test, in order to do well in CELTA. You just have to teach lessons that students benefit from. If you want to experiment with it, that's great. It's a perfect opportunity to try it and learn new things in the process. So, the next most important thing to keep in mind, and this is connected with expectations. In order to standardize a program like CELTA, there has to be a certain kind of framework, right? So CELTA is such a reputable program because it's all following the exact same standardized framework according to Cambridge English assessment criteria. So in that way, keeping that in mind, you have to keep your lessons simple, right? So you need to have one main aim only. So the types of lessons include skills, which are basically reading, writing, listening, or speaking. And these reading and writing ones are considered receptive skills. You have to do at least one good receptive skill lesson, both at the lower level and the higher level. You teach 2 levels in CELTA in order to pass the course. And you don't have to do writing or speaking. That's optional. You can if you want a challenge. It's also an interesting thing to try out. But then also you have the language lessons, which are grammar, vocabulary, or functional language. And you have to do at least one grammar lesson successfully at each level. The lower one, which would be elementary, beginner, perhaps pre-intermediate, or the higher level, which could be intermediate, upper intermediate, and rarely are there advanced. Usually it's upper intermediate. And you would do it at the higher level, which would be intermediate or upper intermediate. So One common pitfall of CELTA candidates is trying to do an integrated skills lesson. You only have 45 minutes for a lesson, so it's not really possible to teach reading, listening, and grammar effectively in one lesson. So coming back to standardization, it's important for us as assessors of your lesson as a tutor to see that you can accomplish one main aim successfully. So if you're doing grammar, it doesn't mean that you should never use any reading or listening in your lesson, but you should keep a very short time for the reading or listening if you do. So if you're in a grammar lesson and you're 20 minutes into the lesson and you're still reading or listening, not very good. You need to accelerate, speed it up. Your grammar clarification should be at the 20-minute mark, and then they should be practicing. A good grammar lesson has at least 15 or 20 minutes of practice, controlled practice, semi-controlled, and freer practice. But that's a different subject altogether. So basically, it's okay to use texts to take language from, for example, a reading or a listening text, but the most important thing is that you achieve your main aim. That main aim should be accomplished by the end of the lesson in order for the tutor to see that you have successfully taught what you said you were going to teach. So basically, these are the three things to keep in mind here. We have a low standard here, okay? So it's not such a big deal. Not as scary or worrying as your colleagues may have made it out to be. Expectations of the tutor are just for improvement. That's it. I just want to see you making progress. And those expectations are linked with the lower standard of the CELTA. And the lesson types are very important when considering tutor expectations. When you teach one type of lesson, don't overcomplicate it. Keep it simple. Just achieve your aim of reading, and that's all you need to do. So, these are the top 3 tips for CELTA. There's a lot more to it, of course, but I just wanted to give you a short introduction to it to kind of help you understand how the course is structured. But if you have any questions, please get in touch with me or write a comment, and I'll get back to you right away. Thanks for watching.